that 6-week mark. I'm feeling pretty good doing my 185 for sets of, 5s and 3s, whatever it was. And I said, I think it's time to switch it up. So then I switched up to front squats, and they were terrible, so weak. And it's starting the cycle all over again. So, I know my numbers aren't where I want them to be, but they're building. And I'm just trying to be really patient with that.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing I try to preach to a lot of people is you've got to, I don't care how old you are, you've got to get that mobility work in. And, like me, for example, when I train, I usually do a lot of dynamic work before I get into my main sets, and then I'll do mobility either after or during the week. But it doesn't, in my opinion, it really doesn't matter. You just need to get it in there.
Yeah.
Especially, like you said, yes, as we do. I'll be 46 in July. Oh, dear Lord. And, I still function. I still move well. Actually, I move better now than I did when I was 36 because I got a little bit smarter with how I do my mobility work. And one of my best friends, I was actually trying to help him because he's like, well, for, majority of his life, his adult life, he was pretty sure he had torn rotators. And I'm like, the more I'm learning and trying to teach him, I'm like, I don't think it's rotator. I think we've got bicep tendon issues, or we got something else going on in there. And start working with him mobility, and it didn't do an ounce of good. Well, come to find out yesterday, and I told him that, the mobility work may or may not help him because he could have something else. Found out that labrum in his shoulder.
Oh.
And it's to the point now where even just to roll over on his side just a little bit, it kills. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know what he's got in store going forward with that as far as surgery and recovery, because he also has a screwed up wrist that he has to get surgically fixed again. So
gotta put him in a bubble.
Do what?
Gotta put him in a bubble.
Yeah. Well, he works road construction, and about 7-8 years ago, I think it was, he got his hand smashed between a couple of huge pipes, and they didn't reattach things the correct way, and it ended up coming loose again. So now he's mad because deadlifting sucks and everything.
Oh,
so. When did you worked with Poliquin, correct, for a little while?
I did, yeah.
Did you do that before or after surgery?
Actually, way before.
Okay.
When I was in college, I was first
I didn't know what
introduced
that
to Charles.
time frame was, so I apologize.
So I've known Charles since I was in college. But my college coach, Judd Logan, was one of Charles' athletes when Judd was competing professionally as a hammer thrower. And so most of our programming in college was based on Charles' teachings.
Yeah.
And he'd come to Ashland. Maybe once or twice I met him in Ashland. But in 2003, 2004, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma and had to kind of reevaluate my entire life.
Right.
As far as what I wanted to do to survive. I laugh about it now. I'm just like, man, that was a pretty rough time. I'm looking back on it now. I'm like, that was pretty hard on a lot of people around me too.
Yeah.
But Judd had contacted Charles when I was starting to go through chemo, saying, hey, I got this gal. I really need some help. And Charles just said, bring her out. So Judd took me out to Arizona to meet Charles out there. And Charles he set me up with some programming, some natural supplements to help me with the nausea when I'm going through chemo. And because my goal was I still wanted to compete at the Olympic trials in 2004.
Okay.
And so I really started working with him monthly, and he was writing my programs for me. I'd go out and see him once a month to kind of get some reevaluations and see how things are going, and it was an incredible experience. I wish that I was more mindful to just ask more questions and write things down, because it's just he had so much knowledge, and I was 23 at the time, so I was not in the mindset of I'm going to take notes of everything this man says, because I had bigger things kind of going on at that time. But looking back, I'm just like, it was such an incredible experience to work with Charles, and just on a more personal level, because he was always so just big. He's big personality, big voice, big big opinions, you know.
Yeah,
and so I rarely saw that when I was with him at the gym, and it was more, okay, here's what we're gonna do, and I do wish I had asked more questions about training, because I didn't know that was going to be my path. I just thought I was going to be a professional athlete forever. And so now that I am the trainer, I look back and, I wish I knew why he did this, or, you know, what went through his mind when he was designing this kind of program. And he was just a really cool individual to know. And we kept up our relationship, just a friendship for, you know, I saw him last summer before he passed, and we went out to lunch. We sat at lunch for 4 hours just chatting about his family and business, and, you know, I talked about training and my family, and it was just such a nice catch up. And I hadn't seen him in probably, you know, a year or two before at Swiss Symposium. So, you know, seeing someone only once a year or every couple of years and then picking up right where you left off and having such a nice chat was, you know, it's something that you kind of value. And, you know, he's still, I mean, his teachings are still, you know, used all around the world, you know, and it's pretty cool to have a little personal experience with that.
Yeah, that's that and Dr. Terry Todd passing this past year. That was great. Two huge losses to the strength community. But you sit and you talk about wanting to ask more questions, and that's one thing that I can't stress enough to people is don't be afraid to ask questions.
And I think I was pretty intimidated too. Because I mean, it's Charles Poliquin, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I think I see coaching now. I see modern coaching now, especially with the whole influx of online coaching and all that. And I just see so much information being regurgitated by coaches without the understanding of why this principle exists. Without doing the research or questioning of why do we do front-loaded box squats as opposed to just putting a barbell on our back and going at it. You know, where some coaches, well, this is just the way I was taught and this is how we're going to do it. You know, and you had somebody like Poliquin, you know, or, you know, if you want to put Louis Simmons in there and, you know, all these guys that have taken time to, you know, not only trial and error with themselves, but now, you know, they put a little bit of research and science, if you will, behind the training methods of how the body's going to adapt. And like you talk about, you know, with the supplementation while you were going through chemo, you know, that is something that I think was way ahead of the time. I didn't know why
Sequoia Gigantea was good for me. I said, okay.
Yeah.
3 times a day, got it. You know?
But even at that, my mom's suffering, battling stage 4 colon cancer.
Wow.
And she's getting, you know, even oncologists and all these people in the medical community, well, you need to take this supplement. And without really knowing why they're telling her to take it, only to find out that it actually can cause adverse effects in some of her readings and scans, you know. So I think that sometimes things are just led to blindly without knowing. And as athletes, sometimes we just fall victim to, well, I'm just going to follow this coach's training module, this mindset, without ever really understanding why you're following it. And I think some ways that makes the difference between being just a weekend warrior athlete versus somebody who tries to do it for a living.
That's such a double-edged sword, because we have all this access to information, and a lot of it's just not correct.
Right.
Or a lot of it's just, it's what you said, regurgitated, where people aren't explaining the whys. And I still get overwhelmed whenever I go to seminars and clinics, just because I understand the information, but sometimes I don't understand the why. And I just get so frustrated because it's either against what I was taught before, or it's just new information, and I'm like, why is this new now? And I've been doing it this way for so long, and why is this study correct, or why is this study not correct? Who funded it? You know, so it's so difficult to kind of find out, well, what's really correct? You know, science tells me this, but, you know, this anecdotal evidence says this. You know, there's a lot of information out there, and I don't know which one's correct.
Well, you know, and even for me, for example, I sit and I read and I research a lot of other coaching, research training modules, diet, all that fun stuff. So I feel like that I am more educated whether that's true or not, the jury's still out on that one. But when it comes to, because you take all this and what it boils down to, and a lot of times, is what's actually going to work in the now with the person that you're working with, because we're all different in some way, shape, or form. While the basics are probably the same, there are those little details that you have to catch for somebody to see a result that desired achievement. So, and let me just ask this, because it hit me as we were discussing this. Having your labrum repaired, having that hip surgery done. You're now a year and a half out of it? 2 years? Just
a little over a year. So,
okay.
I guess, because it was December of last year.
Okay, so having that surgery at this point in your life, as a seasoned veteran, as a coach, athlete, all this. Do you feel that your recovery actually went better now than it would have at, say, age 22 or 23? Because of the way, things have kind of progressed in the sports, or?
I'm not sure about that. I think my age definitely played a little bit of, this was really my second surgery. My first surgery I ever had was my ACL back in 2013, 14.
Okay.
So that was my first real major injury that I had to recover from, and I think that took a little while. I really think that this hip was a little easier than the knee,
okay.
To be honest.
But what I'm wondering is, because of the education, had you had this hip or even your knee surgery done, 15, 20 years ago, had you not been paired up with the right surgeon or the right, and that's even kind of true to this day, because I know there's a lot of surgeons and physical therapists out there who don't have a clue.
Right.
But, but at least I think we're a little bit more advanced in maybe the recovery aspect of it when it comes to athletes, because it would have been a mindset of 20 years ago of, well, right. I had this knee surgery.
I would agree with that. Simply just even comparing between my knee and my hip. I did 2 different types of therapy clinics. The knee was, something a little bit different, and it wasn't as personalized. It wasn't as, as far as the rehab went. And although my knee's great, I think it took a little bit longer than I really hoped it would.
Right.
But with the hip, years later, there's a little bit more science, a little bit more, technology to help out with the recovery, that maybe the hip just improved a little bit better just because everything's a little bit better now. So, yes, I think I would venture to guess that maybe it was a little bit better years down the road than if I was 23.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of variables. I know, we were kind of speaking in hypothetical terms, but, I think the mindset 20 plus years ago would have been, well, you're never going to throw again.
Right.
Why? Because I look at Matt Vincent, for example, who's basically told that he can't compete again.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, with everything that we have in today in the world, how is
right.
What are the factors? I mean, with the technology we have, why can't we figure it out? But mm-hmm. I don't know his exact, issues, for example. There may be underlying issues that there's reasons why they're telling him that you can't do this, but for me, if I were injured in a sport that I loved, it would just kill me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
if I couldn't do it again.
Me too. Well, that's why when they said, "Oh, by the way, you have cancer, you probably won't compete," I'm like, "Oh, yes, I will."
Yeah.
No, you don't understand. Yes, I will. And I did.
Yeah. But those are great, and I don't want to say cancer is great, because cancer freaking sucks.
It does.
But that's one thing in your life that you have in your arsenal that can help somebody else.
No.
If somebody came to you with cancer, we had an athlete local here, Nicole Higgum, if I'm saying her name right, young lady who had cancer. She actually competed at the Indy Highland Games when I did. It was her first one, still on chemo.
Oh, wow.
So you still get out there and you do it and you live your life. But, for you, for example, you've had things happen. You know the mindset of either you roll over and die, or you just keep going, you keep fighting, and you keep living your life to, try to make the best of it.
Mm-hmm.
and I hate saying that, struggles like that make us a better person. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I laugh when you said that,